All right, Travis, appreciate your time today. Can you give us a brief introduction, who you are, kind of like what it was like for you growing up and why you joined the military?
Yeah, my name's Travis Whan. I was born in Ohio, a small town called Beloit, Ohio. I was raised by my grandmother on a small farm and decided to join the Army. Whew, goodness gracious, 1997. From I called from lunch at my place of employment. Called my recruiter, and the next week I was in the Army.
Why
Yeah,
did
I
sorry,
why
did
did
you
I
go
join the
in as
Army?
a why combat engineer? Did he start off as a combat engineer?
I was a combat engineer my entire almost 18 years in the military. Um, I don't know. I grew up, and when I was a kid, like Chuck Norris and Missing in Action and Rambo and all that stuff was big. And I guess I sort of romanticized it when I was a kid, and it just bled over into my adulthood. So it was always in the back of my mind that might be something I would do. And then I just got sick of working in a factory one day at my lunch period, and I called my recruiter, and I tested really well. They said I could have did like pretty much anything. They were shocked when I picked combat engineer. They're like, "Are you sure that's what you want to do?" Well, I said, "Well, I'm joining the Army. I want to do like Army stuff. I don't want to. I mean, I want to do soldier things. I don't want to join the Army and work in an office." Which is funny because that's what I ended up doing there at the end after I got hurt. But yeah, combat engineer. It was it changed a lot from the time that I joined the Army to the time that I got out. Like the job description changed drastically. Like when I first joined, it was pounding pickets, stringing wire, putting in minefields, things like that. And then the war broke out in 2004, and IEDs became this phenomenon, and they just engineers do explosives too. Let's task them with this. Seemed to seem like a good fit, I guess. But yeah, I joined in '97 in January. I went to basic training in AIT at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri during the winter. It was rough there. Um, when I joined the military, I was severely out of shape, like I am now. Once I got out, but I lost 70 pounds in basic training, and I think I joined at 260. I got out of there at 190, and from there I went to Korea. I joined as an E1. I didn't have anything special. I didn't get any bonuses or nothing like that. I just didn't want to do what I was doing. Went to Korea as my first duty station. Learned a lot there. Went to Texas, Fort Hood. Got to do that. They had this Force 21. It was like the experimental engineer equipment stuff. So I got to deal with stuff like that. I got to meet General Shinseki when he was in office. Was a laying captain on a Wolverine. It was the M1 Abrams. Was the big thing I did while I was there. We fought wildfires. Um, and then I went to Germany in 2002. I got into a lot of trouble in Texas. Texas was a um, rough spot for me. I was 22 when I joined the military, so I sort of like set my ways. Not like kids when they join, they don't really. But I was a man, or I thought myself a man. I didn't like to be told what to do so much by people that I knew I was smarter than. So I had a lot of conflict. Uh, I used to joke around and say I was promoted more than a sergeant major of the Army. You know, get demoted, get promoted again, get demoted, get promoted again. But like towards the end of that, I started to pull it together. I got a really good platoon sergeant and first sergeant that, you know, were able to reel me in and focus me in a direction. Gave me responsibility. I guess that's what I needed, more responsibility. And I started to flourish there. And I went to Germany. And I got married right before we left for my first deployment, 2004 to Iraq. I got married. I was supposed to ETS out of Germany, but I got stop lost, and I ended up having to go to Iraq. And like my marriage, I was married less than a year, and it went down the toilet. And my grandmother died of cancer like the first month I was in Iraq. And it was like icing on the cake for that experience. Get divorced, grandmother dies. You know, she raised me. She was like my mother. And then I was a little bit bitter that the Army didn't let me go back. And because I knew my grandmother was dying, that's why I was getting out, really, because I wanted to spend time with her before she passed, and I didn't get to. So I was a little bit bitter. I was out of control on my first deployment. Oh, I I would wear civilian clothes at sundown, like walk around with civilian. People thought I was a contractor. I would go days without shaving, and like no, it was crazy that like the first year there, we were shooting everything. There was like it was a free for all, and like nobody would say anything to anyone if they thought they were like slightly unstable. And I guess people thought I was more than slightly unstable. Like we would get rules of engagement where it's like 1 week it'd be like, hey, anybody dressed all in black, you're allowed to shoot them. And I don't know, for anyone that's ever been in Iraq, there's a shit ton of people that dress all in black. So they had to change that ROE. And then it was like, hey, if they're carrying a shovel, well, we were in like an agricultural area, Bakuba, and so people were out there just shooting farmers and stuff. It was crazy. And yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm sure people regret. I mean, the things that I regret. Like I should have used more of a personal judgment than what, you know, my higher enlisted and officers and stuff like that made up the rules. Once you get on the ground, you get a little more experience. By the end of that tour, like I had come to understand a little more about what was going on, and came up with my own rules of engagement. Like things just doesn't make sense coming down. I guess they got tired of people getting hurt and getting killed, and like the IEDs were crazy. They were so unsophisticated, the IEDs at first, you know, like artillery rounds and guardrails and stuff like that. Like, and this was before we had specialized equipment. Like, I think the first time I saw like a buffalo or we didn't have the Huskies. They had this thing called the Meerkat. It was the predecessor, I think, to the Husky. It was a lot smaller. First time I saw them was probably like 2 months before I left theater, and that was a National Guard engineer company that was coming to replace us. They got that equipment, and if we would have had that, we were rolling around in Humvees with sandbags in them and stuff.
Scary.
You know, we didn't even have armor. So like, if you're in a Buffalo or a MRAP or something, like a 155 round ain't really going to do much to you. But if you're in a, you know, soft side Humvee with sandbags, it's totally different story. So I think that put people more on edge, and why they probably lean to just following orders and shooting people carrying shovels. But I mean, Like you shoot somebody that didn't need to be shot, it kind of sticks with you.
Sure.
And so after that, you kind of can piece together your own rules of engagement and use a little bit more common sense. Before you shoot somebody, it's all theory, like, oh, I could do it. I could do it. And then once you do it, it's like, well, that wasn't like what I thought it was going to be. And then you're a little more hesitant after that, a little more selective. But yeah, I ended up pulling it together by the time I left there. I ended up ETSing after that. I went back home, went to school, Kent State. Did that for about 2 years, did well. I was on the dean's list and stuff like that, probably because I couldn't sleep. So I had a lot of study time and a lot of, so, when you can't sleep, what am I going to do? Might as well learn something. So, but then I met another girl and we started dating. We ended up moving in together. She had kids, 2 kids from a previous marriage. And I was finding it hard to go to school, work, and have this family life. My grades were slipping and I couldn't take care of them with the part-time job that I had. So I was like, I'm gonna join the military again. So like 2007, I went back in. I had to get back in shape so I could pass all the PT tests. I only lost 1 rank. I went back in as a specialist. Got to pick Fort Carson is where I wanted to go. So I went to Fort Carson. Ended up with the 4th Engineer Battalion. It was also in the 555th Engineer Brigade, but it was in Fort Carson. Got married. Was there for about 2.5 years before I got deployed again to Iraq. I was a team leader when I got deployed to Iraq. I made E5 again. My wife moved back home while I was deployed because we were going to change duty stations. But once I deployed, she ended up dating some other dude, moved in with him. Another marriage down. This one I didn't know about it until probably 9 months into the deployment, because we started that deployment off in Iraq, in Baghdad, but we were only there for about 3 months, and then they pulled us out of Iraq. We had to pack up all our things and fly. We flew them all into Kandahar.
Whoa, mid-deployment?
Mid-deployment.
Wow.
Yeah, they shipped us from Iraq to Kandahar. And like by that time, Baghdad was the place to be. It was like things are really chill, a lot different than the first time I was there. I mean, they had the EFPs and stuff like that, but like it was there were a lot less incidents. So, and plus you had like all the amenities. They had internet and all that stuff. So like I got to keep in touch with my wife and everything. And then once we went to Kandahar, it was a real crap hole. So you lose contact with everybody back home. And then once we got all our equipment, we had to start taking it to fob leatherneck. It's a Marine base, like South Afghanistan, Helmand province. And we moved all our equipment from Kandahar, drove it all. Like I made multiple trips. The first trip I made was in Buffalo with no air conditioning
That was fun.
in July. And we were swimming in our own sweat by the time we got there. I made that trip a few times just to get that. We had limited NCOs. They wanted to make sure that you had NCOs, TC in these vehicles. And I went because I had more experience. There's only a handful of us that had been in theater, even in Iraq at that time. So I ended up pulling like double duty, triple duty sometimes. But we made it down to Leatherneck, and that was where our base of operation was. And it was a lot different. First off, it was just Marines there everywhere. And they did not get supplied very well, in comparison to us. Like as far as like even like down to rations or parts for your vehicles, and just they were really like pieced together like shabbily. They were driving around in 5 tons that looked like when we first were in Iraq. So whenever my men would catch them in our motor pool, like stealing stuff that they needed, they come to me, hey, the Marines are taking them. I'm like, man, just let them have it. Like, we got plenty. Those guys, like, look at what they're rolling out in, man. They can have whatever they want. If they would have came to us and asked us, I would have gave it to them. It's just, it was shameful how they were equipped for doing the same missions that we were doing. The whole platoon lived in one tent. It was like your rucksack was at the end of your cot, and you were in smooching distance to your neighbors. And that's how it was. But we didn't stay there very often. When we would go out on missions, because there were hardly any route clearance engineers over there at the time, we would go out for like weeks at a time, just hopping from fob to fob to fob, like doing missions for different task force. Like on the way, I was all over the place during that deployment. Like we worked with like special forces guys, clearing routes for them, for their missions. We worked for like the Danish guys and the British. We helped them out. It would be I think the longest mission we had was 2 weeks without coming back to our home base, our home fob. And we would be out there and just our mine rollers would take a hit, and you'd have to just piece them together and keep going, because you're like so far away, and hope that the next place you go, you can get them fixed or what. It was, I remember I took 2 IED hits inside of 30 minutes one time on my rollers. By the time we got to our our little cop where we were going, I had like 3 rollers left on my mine rollers. Yeah, it was crazy. Like, so I lost contact with my wife, and I didn't know she left me until probably about 9 months.
Wow.
Like, oh, she left. So, and then I got to, I would wait for hours to use the internet for like 15 minutes. Like that's what it was like. Hours to use internet, 15 minutes. And then I saw she withdrew $40,000 from my bank account. She crashed my car. She ran up my credit cards, and then she left. So two marriages down. But I took my first IED strike in Helmand province on that deployment. It was on a route called Route Neptune. They called it Neptune because it ran next to a canal. It's real clever. We had a British engineer riding in our MRAP. We had a RG-31 at the time, and I was the lead truck. And next to canals in the desert, that's where all the vegetation is. So we didn't have like real good, overwatch on the convoy. You could, if anything happened, you couldn't get around because you were up on this like build up roadway that goes next to these canals. So we decided to put a gun truck in the front with mine rollers, just so, if anything happened, we'd have guns up front. And that's my gun truck hit. They estimated to be like 500 pounds.
Big one.
We had a British engineer in the back. He broke his back. They thought I broke my neck because I like got thrown up into the ceiling. My driver's weapon got busted in half. It was just a mess. It was a mess. They had to scrap that truck because it dented the hull, the V-shaped hull. It just dented it. And then so that was the first time I ever got like rocked by IED. And I remember it's so dusty in there, and like you can't see the guy sitting next to you. And my driver's like, my weapon's broken in half. I'm like, yeah, I think we got bigger problems than that right now. But then we started taking small arms, and luckily the 50 was still operational, and we could suppress, and they took off pretty easily after that because we had like overwatch from the Danes, I think. Yeah, the Danish army. And so we went back to the special forces compound, and they got me a medevac out of there because my arm went numb on the one side, and they're like, the special forces medic like thought that I might have a broken neck, so they sent me back to Leatherneck where they had the MRI machine. Well, I got back to Leatherneck, the MRI machine wasn't working.
Of course.
So what they did was I was on observation overnight, and then when my platoon rolled in the next day, I just jumped in the trucks with them and took off, and that's how they treated my possible broken neck. I ended up like nerve damage in my neck. I broke my clavicle, my collarbone on the end. I still got like a piece broken off in there. Tore my rotator cuff, and concussion, obviously. But I stayed for the rest of the deployment for not like another 6 months after that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was my first, and then I got into 12 more the rest of my career after that. So
12 more deployments.
12 more IED hits.
Oh, IED. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 12 deployments. Hell no, man.
Fuller did it.
Yeah. No, I'm good.
No, right.
But then we ended up going to probably 3 months before we left. They started to open up these different fobs along Route 1, because and more engineers started coming in. And so they were like figuring out where they were going to put us. So we didn't have such a big area of responsibility. And we ended up going to, what was that name of that place? What was the name of the fob we were at for?
Saab. It was
Yeah,
Wilson and then it was Basab.
Bob Wilson is where I went. Bob Wilson. It was Canadians, and it was tiny. You remember those Hesco baskets at the back of our tents?
Oh yeah.
That was the outside wall when I got there of the fob.
So it was like half the size.
Not even half. It was so tiny. And we ended up building the tents that we stayed in the last time we were there. I stayed like one tent over from my original tent.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there were these rumors that we were going to get like housing units, choose. Like, oh man, they're like, well, we're either going to stay here at Leatherneck and get choose, or we're going to go to Fob Wilson and have to sleep in tents again. I'm like, oh, we're going to fucking Wilson. Like, obviously, why would we stay here and start living the life of luxury? We're gonna go to Wilson, build these tents, stay in them, and spend our last 3 months, in this hotbed. Like that was where like all the action was building up right there at Wilson or Passab area. So that's where they sent us. And so we built those right next to the Canadian artillery battery. So you got used to sleeping with artillery going off. You didn't know artillery's going out, what time. They tried to tell us, but sometimes it didn't get passed all the way down to the lowest levels. So yeah, we went there, and then that's when they started using recoilless rifles, like right when I was leaving. Like RPGs were always a thing, Um, but this new thing that they had out for us, this recoilless rifle, and it was scary. Like anytime there was anything going on, that's the recoilless rifle team. There's always one out there. And then they started using it to like shoot at the fob. Like right when I was leaving, I was like, thank God we're getting out of here. Because that thing, it was just a different level of scary recoilless rifle compared to a RPG. I mean, I've seen like a lot of crazy stuff working with the British and stuff like that. Like I was on one of their fobs when it was attacked by a 50 caliber anti-aircraft gun that was pulled by a truck. Yeah, so this truck pulls up on a hill and just starts blasting the fob with 50 cal round, and their fob is tiny, you know, and they just tore that place up. And I couldn't believe like those guys lived in that. Like, like I don't know how they could let something again. They weren't as what the United States military, the equipment, the ISR, all that assets that we have, phenomenal compared to these other countries.
Sure.
And when you have to go to these other fobs and stuff with these other countries, you just realize like how good you have it being in the United States Army. Like to have to worry about a pickup truck driving up with towing this 50 cal and shooting you up while you're. It was ridiculous. We go back to Passab and they're playing basketball. You know, they don't do that any other places. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's crazy stuff, man. But yeah, I got out of there. I re-enlisted. Once I found out that my wife left me, I re-enlisted. I said, well, I'm still getting out of there. I'm going to Fort Lewis. So I came back, um, spent my minimum 90 days or whatever. Like once you get back, they make sure that you're not nutso or whatever. And then they sent me off to Fort Lewis, JBLM. Yeah. So I got there. When was that? 6, 7, 9. Was it 11? 2011?
Deployed in 11. So
I'll
if
say
that
they were deployed. They were deployed whenever I first got there.
okay, yeah, 2011.
All right. So I got there and then they put me in that construction. What was the name of that? It was right across the quad from us. What were those construction cats?
You mean their battalion, or what do you mean?
Yeah.
There was 570th, 571st. No, they were. Yeah, I don't know the construction. I don't recall.
Man. Oh, if I can remember. Well, it was a construction battalion, and it was they needed an E6 there. So they scooped me up. And like meanwhile, the combat engineers are deployed. And I'm like, I don't want to be in this construction thing. You know, it was like a desk job. And like I said, when I joined the military, I didn't want a desk job. I wanted to do army stuff, you know? So I kept talking to company commander and then a battalion commander. And then finally, like the brigade commander saw me. And when the 22nd stood up, they moved me over there as a squad leader.
Oh, so you got there before 2011. You got there in 2009, and that was when that company was returning, and that's when 22nd stood up.
Was that
2000.
okay? Well,
Yeah, sorry.
all
Then
right.
22nd like originated 2009, and then they deployed in 2011, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, my
So
timeline's all good. But I usually like tell like the time or where I've been at by what movie comes out or what song is
so
famous. Like, oh, that song came out when I was in Texas, so that must have been, you know, whatever. But
can
yeah,
we
and then I went to 22nd, brand new, you know, brand new. They didn't know anything, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna deploy." It's like, okay, yeah. And for the longest time, I was the only one that had ever been to Afghanistan in the 22nd.
I
I don't
want to
know.
I want to ask something on that. One, we're at the 5 minute mark I talked about. But I'm watching you talk about the end of your Afghanistan deployment. You're mentioning recoilless rifles, and I noticed you paused, and I think there was something you'd seen. I'm guessing there's something you'd seen with the recoilless that had some kind of connotation or some kind of fear. But what I want to ask is, knowing that you get assigned to JBLM, this unit, this combat engineer unit is going to deploy again. You're in a construction company, and yet you still were willing to go back to combat
Yeah,
arms to deploy again. Like, what's your mentality at that point in time? You know, you've got this threat. You just were relieved to get away from. What's driving you to go back to that?
Well, it's the like you see the faces of these kids, that are going up. They don't know what to expect, and I don't know. Yeah, you feel responsible for them. You think even if, say, I deployed 4 different times, and even if I didn't directly, save someone's life, or I think at least those 4 times that I saved somebody else from having to go there and possibly.
Sure.
So, maybe I saved 4 marriages. Maybe like,
Sure.
I don't know. It's just, I always volunteered to do the thing that nobody wanted to do, or because uh, I don't know. It's just you want to. I don't know. You want to take care of people. Like once I started, once I became an NCO and got to actually change people's experiences, I sort of liked it. I liked being able to make things better for others, because like I said, I got into a lot of trouble when I was junior enlisted. And if there was somebody there that would actually just cared about me as a person, I feel like I could have, advanced or became successful a lot sooner. And I just wanted to care for the guys and make sure that they had somebody there that gave a shit about them, gave a shit about them.
Sure.
And the mission. And, the mission is great. And I know it's mission first and this, that, and the other. But if the mission needs to get done and somebody's going to be in danger, I would rather it be me than them. That's why I always volunteered to go in the front. That's why I always, when they needed my first deployment, my roommate, he was scared, so scared. Anytime they needed extra bodies, I would volunteer to keep him out of it. I guess I don't value myself as much as I value somebody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the conclusion I want you to draw, but I'm gonna pause it here 1 second. One.
Yeah. So I, for whatever reason, I decided that I wanted to deploy again with this new unit that just stood up. And there was nobody in the unit. They were waiting for people to come in, and I'd never been part of something like that before. It was a mess, actually. But little by little they started adding pieces and pulling guys from different units, and people that were PCS came in. And for the longest time, I'm not even sure if up to the day we deployed, I was the only guy there that had ever been in Afghanistan. So it was always when something came up, they'd ask me, what did you see over there? What was it like? What what kind of equipment do we need? And I do my best to tell them, but I didn't know. They didn't know exactly where we were going to be, or else they couldn't tell us where we were going to be, or whatever reason. But if we were going to be where I was before, I tell them Well, we should have designated marksmen. We should have like M14s, like maybe one per squad at least, because in the desert, like when you're on the road and they're shooting at you from grape rows, or you can't like close the gap there, and you need to be able to reach out and touch them. So I said, yeah, we need long range rifles, and they got us shotguns, which is the exact opposite of what we need. Is they give us shotguns that went underneath our M4s, and all they did was make it heavy and awkward. And I don't know anybody that ever used the shotgun while they were over there. Um, I said, hey, we need some 203s, grenade launchers. And I think for the longest time, we only had two in a company and they were in headquarters. So, like, they'd ask me, I'd tell them, but like, they didn't necessarily, take my advice or heed my words very much. But so we got ready. We're going. Everybody's excited, a little scared. You know, this is I'm scared, especially when I find out we're going back to where I was at.
Mhm.
You know, like I had just gotten away from that recoilless rifle, and now I'm going back to it. So, but at least the fob is bigger. We have more assets there now. So, maybe not so bad. But yeah, I'll be damned if during one of our missions my truck didn't get shot with the recoilless rifle, and I was so lucky. Like we were escorting these MICLICs, the mine clearing line charges, and they had one launcher, and they were clearing this route like brand new. They were trying to connect these two routes, and they would fire that thing off, and it's 1,800 pounds of explosive. Like, it's drawing attention of anyone that's in the area. So they shoot it, it goes off, and then they reload this thing, and we're sitting there forever. And the longer you sit somewhere, the worse it is, And we're blasting off 1,800 pounds after 1,800 pounds. And we're sitting there just idle in this one spot. And my truck gets hit, coilless rifle. And it came in the front passenger side corner of the vehicle and landed, like, all of the molten metal, like, from the rifle goes through the truck and lands underneath. Like, from where this guy shot this thing from, if he'd have aimed like maybe 3 inches up, that thing would have went right through my chest.
Jesus Christ.
But instead, it goes through and goes underneath the truck, blows out all four tires. Right. And then it's a dust cloud. It's like hitting an IED, getting shot with one of those things. It's a dust cloud in there. All our comms are down. I can't talk to anybody. I can't talk to my gunner. And the truck won't move because we lost all air pressure because it took out all four tires. But I don't know this at the time. So I look up and guess who's my driver? Shalhoub.
Oh, that's not who I was gonna guess.
So that is my driver. I look over at him. I said, "Hey, we should move. They're reloading right now." He's like, "I can't move. I can't move. We lost the brakes or whatever. The brakes." And I'm like, "All right." And then I was gonna talk to my gunner. Now, my gunner, I don't remember his name, but I remember his face. And everybody thought he was like the biggest dork in the world. Like this guy, like you never know what somebody's gonna be like when they take fire, or like back on JBLM, the guy could be a stud and everybody thinks he's like real hot shit. But once bullets start flying and shit starts exploding, he like wets his pants and crawls into a ball. I this guy, everybody thought that he was like this chump, man, but he starts shooting it back at this dude. And I credit him for not getting shot a second time. Like he starts returning, and he was my guy after that. Like, yeah, man, you could come gun for me anytime you want. But yeah, it's like the front, the truck that was in the front of us, they saw it happen, and they thought everybody like, oh, they're dead.
Sure.
Like that's what it looked like when it hit. Like, oh, these guys are dead. But no, our once the gun started going, and we got the secondary comms up and started talking. So everybody started suppressive fire, and then we got in touch with the birds, and they come in, and we marked buildings with smoke grenades. And like once we got them suppressed, I'm like underneath this truck caging all these brakes just so we can drag it out of there. We shot so many 203s out of our personal weapons that the platoon sergeant thought that the Mark 19 was the automatic grenade launcher was shooting. Like, no, for whatever reason, like they couldn't get it to operate, but we were just volleying 203s at this building where they were like, it's one of those great putts, like with all the little one. Man, we were blasting that thing. And then like we got back, took that thing back while I was underneath there caging the brakes. I found the tail boom to the cordless rifle. I kept it. You're not supposed to. I got it. Brought it home with me. Like that's probably the closest I come to biting it. I would say inches on that thing, and it would have went right through my chest. Probably taking off the gunner's legs. Who knows? The one that, like my previous deployment, when they first started using it in that area, I saw what it could do, man. It was like surgical. This kid, he was in the gunner seat. They took one hit, and it was like somebody took it was like somebody took a just like a saw blade and just chopped this kid in half. Is and you don't know where, like, the range on those things is ridiculous, and they just fire at one time and then they can disappear on you, and you can't fight it. You can't fight back. And that's what was scary about it. Like, you're out there looking for IDs, you sort of know, you got an idea, like, hey, something blow up right on, but like direct fire like that is different than getting hit with an IED. But yeah, like all the arm in the world wasn't stopping that thing. So, but we took no casualties, and they reevaluated their method for firing multiple MICLICs.
Sure.
They got to cut time on target. The longer you're out there, the longer they have to react to you and come mess you up, and then just disappear into the crowd. Yeah. So, but luckily that was my only experience with that particular weapon system. You don't get small arms here and there, and always like route clearance is the most boring job until it's not.
Mhm.
Like you'd be out there for hours just dragging along, looking at sticks on the road. Oh my goodness, did they put this here for a reason, or did it just float in there on its own? So it, you develop a sort of paranoia about, like changes in your environment. And then, like, you start looking at crowds of people differently and, like, try to anticipate their intent. And, like, it carries over. Like, I don't go places that I don't know. Like, I'm not comfortable with crowds of people that I don't know. And like I know, like 99.9 whatever times out of 100, like nothing. There's nothing going on. But that don't make no difference. You know, my wife, I got married for a third time. This one stuck 10 years now. I got 2 kids. Um, like she knows what seat I like to sit in whenever we go somewhere. She doesn't ask me to go to concerts with her, stuff like that. I like to be in a place where I can control
Sure.
things. Like it's has caused some stress for her, but like she tries to understand, but I don't think that she ever will like really understand. I don't like to talk to her about things because I don't want my wife looking at me like I'm some kind of wounded animal,
Mhm.
you know? Like I go see therapists and psychiatrists and stuff and I talk to them because I don't have anyone in my local area, like any of my friends. I don't have friends from high school. I don't have friends from my old jobs. I don't make friends with people that I don't already know. You know, like if I want to go see my friend, I got to go to Maine or I got to go to, you know, Louisiana or Colorado or Washington. And it's it's hard to make friends with people that don't understand things that you understand, I guess. Like they don't have an experience. Like like when they start talking about things that they think matter, it's ridiculous to me. I don't know. Like, oh, that's what you're worried about. Like I can't. I tried. I'm just not very good at it. But the good news is I can call up any one of my guys that I served with or whatever, and if I haven't talked to him in 2 years, just like I talked to him yesterday, you know, I miss I miss it. I miss having the people around you that know how you feel without you having to tell them.
Yeah.
And uh, yeah, I miss it. Ridiculous.
Not ridiculous at all.
But I miss all of them, you know. We had we had our medic on one of our last missions that we like really went on. He got hit, dismounted an IED, lost both his legs and half his one arm. I was like 20 feet from him when it happened. I was a platoon sergeant at the time. And it haunts me because I feel like I could have did something different and that wouldn't have happened, and I feel responsible for this. And yeah, I love that kid. I love him to this day. And like I'll never know how he feels, truly feels about what happened or his outlook on his life now, or like he can tell me how he feels, but in my heart, in my mind, in my heart, I feel responsible for that. And it weighs heavy on me every day. And I don't know what to do with it.
I want you to know, after this, I want to talk to you about that because I may be able to give you some insight into that. There's something I had circled earlier about you I was going to share, and I think I can tie that together. Was there anything else that you'd like to share about that deployment before we kind of progress past that point?
Um, well, I started off at deployment working in the talk, which I did not like. Why? I'm the only guy with experience in that area. It put me in a talk, and it was, I'm sure it was because of my platoon sergeant at the time, Altoff. You remember that guy?
I do.
Yeah, he's a real piece of work. I feel like that's why I got stuck there, because he had like a vendetta against me. So I fought and I fought and I fought like I want to go down the line. That's where I need to be. And then tragedy struck, and they needed somebody. You remember McCollum?
I do. I
That's it.
was there. Yes, I do.
That's the tragedy. And I went and I took his place. Like, and it was strange coming in because his men loved him. You know, he was a good dude, still is a good dude. You know, to come in and like take out, that is not what I wanted. And that's just the way that it happened. So and I ended up being a squad leader. And my platoon sergeant was a good platoon sergeant. he he was unique, and I learned a lot from him. You know, even just about life in general. And they ended up taking him up to headquarters, and I slid into the platoon sergeant slot.
That was Paleo, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that was play. He's yeah, he's a unique dude, man.
It's one of my favorite people.
Yeah, mine too. I still talk to him once in a while. He's I think last time I heard he was a vegetarian. Like, yeah, I don't know if that's gonna last very long, but anyway, so I slid in a platoon sergeant spot. So then I had to start dealing with first sergeants and commanders and stuff like that. And that was a new experience for me that I did not care for. Well, I didn't care for our first sergeant at all. And he did not like me. And it was sort of like this tense thing whenever we were in the same room, like he knew I didn't like him and I knew he didn't like me, and we sort of like said nice things to each other, like bad intent. It was just terrible. And so I feel like we would draw the short straw once in a while because of his personal feelings towards me. And then when we got back to JBLM, first field problem we had, he fired me as a platoon sergeant via text message. Oh my goodness. Well, it was good because I didn't like having to deal with like the bureaucracy crap of being a platoon sergeant. Squad, if I could have been a squad leader forever, I would have been happy. It was the best job I ever had, best job I'll ever have. Yeah. But yeah, yeah. I didn't like the way I ran things. And I was like, but it's my platoon, right? Like he give me general guidance and then I decide how I'm gonna do it. And he didn't like how I did it. I got shit canned. No, I'm all right with that. Yeah. I've been promoted more than the sergeant major of the army. You can't keep me down.
Right.
So then I went to Sapper school when we got back. They asked me if I wanted to go while we were still down range. I'm like, I'm too old for that. Yeah, I was like coming up on 40 years old. I'm like, I'm not gonna be a 40-year-old dude at Sapper school. Are you crazy? I'm like, I gave them a list of schools that I would like to do, like your wish list, how that comes down. We'll be first for schools when we get back. What do you want to do? I gave my wish list. They disregarded everything on it and said, you're going to Sapper school. I said, okay. And I blew out my knee in Sapper school,
Wow.
and they sent me up to headquarters company. I went to the S3. And it was miserable. I mean, did my job because what am I not going to do my job? But I did not like it. DTS, that was me, the schools guy, sending people to school, getting their paperwork and all that crap. I was good at it. I would get everybody like as much money as I could possibly get. It was like I felt like Ben Affleck in The Accountant, you know. Oh, yeah. So you use the company car, you know. Like, let me write this off. Let me write that off. Like I became so good at it that the brigade sergeant major and a brigade colonel came down and wanted their stuff done by me.
Right on.
This is the guy. This is the guy that does the. I should have put an account. Nah, but yeah. And then when I didn't get any better, and then I started having back problems, and for they wouldn't operate on my knee because they couldn't guarantee that it would make it any better. And once you can't take a PT test or become non-deployable, and I got booted out and medically retired. 2 years I just would have retired. I had orders to go to Hawaii.
No, man.
But just wasn't in the cards. But that's all right because I was married, had my first kid, 39. Had a kid at 39. Oh, don't do it, man. Have a kid when you're young. When you're old, kids wear you out. They say, oh, it'll keep you young. Bullshit, man. It just wears you out faster. You got to try to keep up with their little asses. I got 2 girls now. The older one is like her mother. The younger one is like me. So I worry about them both. But they'll be all right. So now I'm medically retired. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I take care of them. My wife's a nurse. Um, take care of those kids. That's my job. It is rough. Yeah, my wife doesn't let me run it like a squad.
Probably not.
She lets them have like opinions and stuff. I'm like, I tell them what to do and then they do it. And no, no, I want them to have their own voice and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, they can voice stuff, but they're still gonna do it. Yeah, we're a little bit different, and it's true. I don't run this house. She's in charge. Yeah, maybe I learned that over the other 2 marriages. I don't know. Maybe she's just crazy enough to stay with me. I mean, it seems like every other week it's like, you're crazy, I'm leaving. All right, I'm crazy, I'm staying. So crazy enough for each other, make it work.
Good.
Yeah. 10 years. 10 years. I've married 10 years this month. Twice as long as my last marriage. So I think after 10 years, you're not going anywhere.
You'd hope not.
Yeah. We got a house. We got 9 rabbits, 7 chickens, a cat, 2 kids, a mortgage. Yeah, we're in it.
Yeah, you don't want to split up the chickens and rabbits. That'd be.
I know, but it's an odd number. You can't split them up. The kids are even number, but the rabbits and chickens are odd numbers. We can't break them up.
That's what I'm gonna do. Is I'm gonna buy things in odd numbers now.
Yeah.
That's
Thought about having a 3rd kid, but I'm just too damn old for that. I'm coming up on 50. Whoo.
yeah.
Yeah, I never thought I'd live this long. Yeah. Never thought. No, I was only when I was younger, I was like, I'm probably gonna, go out and this blaze of glory and this. Nah, I'm probably gonna die at like high cholesterol or something now. I had all these chances to go out a hero, and now I'm just gonna like one day I'm gonna Elvis it on the can or something, you know, and that'll be my story. Yeah, look at this. He made it through all this stuff and got blown up all these times and all these things and high cholesterol took him out. Yeah, father time's undefeated. So eventually
Yeah.
everybody's ticket gets punched. I
Right.
feel fortunate enough that, I lived long enough to have these kids and, have a life that, like when I'm gone, somebody will remember me.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, before I had these kids, it was like, well, what happens when everybody that you know or that knew you is gone, and then nobody remembers you? It's like you weren't even here. Does anything that you did really make a difference? Yeah. But now I got these kids, and they'll tell their kids about me.
Yep.
And like, oh, grandpa is this crazy guy. He got a naked lady tattooed on his arm. He used to make it dance for us. Yeah. Like that's me. I got my hair cut into a mohawk, and my older daughter's like, yes, mohawk dad. So yeah, I'm their hero. You know,
Yeah, you are.
and I don't know anything about anything that I've ever done because they're just not old enough to understand these things. Like I don't even know if they'll ever be able to understand it. But I hope they never have to.
Right.
You know, it's not something that I wish on people. I wish that they could be blissfully ignorant of the feelings I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So I'm gonna spend some time with you after. I want to say I appreciate your time for the interview. And it's once again hitting that 5 minute mark. So we'll just end it here.
all right.
All right. And thank you for that. I appreciate that. And
Uh, it's
go
been
ahead.
I got to clean my eyes out a little bit. It's been a
Yeah.
while. Yeah. All right, man. I appreciate. I didn't think I was gonna be able to talk that long about anything.
I'm glad you did. And there's when we talk about your story and your children knowing that, I think there's a lot there to discuss too. But I think this is one of those ways to present it in a human way where it can be compassionate and yeah, people just understand some of the layers to that. I think it's important that we share our stories, and this is a way that this will be recorded and it'll always be accessible, whether you choose to show them that, but it'll always be accessible to them.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.